When you look up the bluffs over La Crosse, you may not realize that there is acre after acre that used to be prairie. In order to return those areas to their original state, an effort is underway to clear out trees that were never meant to be there. In today's Hour Outdoors, how the prairie, which is nearly wiped out around the globe, is returning to the La Crosse Blufflands.
It's hard to believe, but all of these bluffs along the Mississippi and in the driftless area in general were mostly prairie at the time of European settlement.
Prairies are Bill Kaiser's specialty as a biologist with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Kaiser, along with several local groups and volunteers, have come together to take on the task of returning areas like these that are now overgrown with trees and brush back to prairie lands.
These are kind of almost the iconic landscape of the driftless area prior to World War II. And not that trees are bad, but we don't want trees out in the prairies.
And although most of us appreciate the beauty of this area, many probably don't realize just how rare these prairies really are.
Prairies are basically 99.9% eliminated globally, and these are one of the few opportunities that we have in the upper Midwest to actually restore a prairie that has its native plant community intact, has all the birds and the butterflies and all the other invertebrates that we don't typically think about. They're already here.
This specific prairie is called the goat prairie because of its steep terrain.
There's another one that hasn't been cut down it's pretty tall. That's probably 15 feet tall, I'd say.
To return this to a prairie, first crews have to remove the great majority of trees.
Woody species, like even our native sumac and aspen and birch, those are our pioneer species and they love this sun. So they start to grow here and they create these colonies and they shade the ground and then they end up changing the ecosystem. So it takes it from a prairie and it starts to move it into a woodland.
So as the woodland is removed on this bluff, very quickly native plants will start to return, bringing with them a very important part of our ecosystem.
Bluff prairies are host to hundreds, if not thousands, of different species of rare butterflies, moths, native bees, pollinators that we really rely on for our food.
And there are some not so obvious species.
There's the winged snaggletooth snail, a tiny little snail that lives on goat prairies. And we have different sparrows that like to use the area, and there's even bat hibernacula. Bats tend to come in here and use these little rock crevices.
As Bill Kaiser oversees all the work being done on this bluff, he knows this is just the beginning.
And the goal is to eventually do the same work to all the prairies in the Hickson Forest and La Crosse Blufflands properties.
So right now they need volunteers to get all of this brush collected and pulled off the bluff. And if you'd like to find out how to volunteer, just call the Forest Management Coordinator at 608-789-7309. And if you love to hike that area and want to check it out, they just ask that you stay on the trails and not disturb these prairie areas.